Hello and welcome to the Recreation to Recreation podcast, the show where we explore the stories of people who have turned the activity that they love into positive change for our world. My name is Jen, and I'll be your sidekick on this adventure as we treasure hunt for gems of insight and wisdom while exploring the planet with our inspiring guests. For today's adventure, we're heading to Oahu and beyond with Melinda to explore her world of grief, curiosity, and watercolor painting. Hi, Melinda.
Hi, Jen.
So good to see you. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
I'm giddy, excited, ecstatic. Yeah, thank you for this.
So good. So before we dive deep, because I have a feeling we're going to do that today, I would
Mhm.
love if you could just tell us where you are, what's going on there, and just get us situated in your world.
I am currently on the island of Oahu in
Mhm.
Hawaii. It's funny, I almost said I'm in San Diego because that's where I was for 10 years. But no, I'm a Hawaii girl at heart and I've come back home. Yeah.
So beautiful. I bet it's warm there.
It is warm, sometimes too warm, but
Mm.
it's really good. Yeah. I think I used to think the dream was to just always be in the tropics.
Mm.
And I do appreciate it. I love Hawaii weather, but the more I reconnect with my nature and then see nature, I respect the seasons. So there is a part of me that's like, "Oh, you're living out something that's so beautiful and natural."
Yes, and I definitely resonate with that. I too have dreamt of living in the tropics at times. But yeah, I definitely do live very seasonally and try to live in alignment with that too, and really look at what the seasons are inviting for me as I move through them. And I actually want to talk about Instagram, but that's obviously where I found you. I just take pictures of nature. I don't really do much else on there, but I've kind of started sort of really celebrating the seasons, and I sort of put a little tagline that says, "Nurture your nature," because mother knows best. You know, she's telling you, "Now's the time to rest. Now's the time to plant. Now's the time to harvest." And I think there's
Mhm.
something really beautiful about that. And hopefully there are ways that you can do that too, even though you live in Hawaii.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely reinventing my relationship to nature.
Oh, I look forward to delving more into that. So, before we're going to go all the way back and start at the beginning, but I always like to start these conversations with what I call weird and wonderful questions. So, I hope you're okay if I just ask you 6 questions. They really don't have anything to do with anything, but they always bring me joy. And so, if you're up for the adventure, that would be great.
Always down for your adventure. Yeah.
Yay. Okay. So, if you could pick a day to relive again and again, which would it be?
Wow. Wow. I had so many flashbacks come to
Mhm.
mind. The one that wants to step forward is the day that painting made sense. Yeah. Like, I had been painting for actually not that long. It was 3 weeks into me starting to paint consistently and really, like, choosing, like, we're not giving up. And it was, like, 8 PM on a random Tuesday night, and I painted a botanical that I was simply just trying out, and everything just came together. Like, I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's what the paintbrush is supposed to feel like when you're in flow." And I made my first piece that I knew I was gonna be a painter after that. Yeah. So that was January of 2025.
Oh, that's juicy. That is such a beautiful answer. Yes, I love that so much. So, had you painted before, taken a break, or you were coming back to it?
Yeah, I've had a love affair with creativity my whole life, but especially painting. I'd been off and on since 2022.
Mm.
Yeah. And 2025 was when I finally was like, I don't know why, I don't know how, but something is telling me we must see this through. Like, we must practice every day. So I did. And then I was like, oh, I see why. I see why the voice was telling me to do that.
Oh, that's so gorgeous. Okay. Well, see, this is the thing because it's my podcast, I get to decide when I ask secondary questions.
That's great.
I'm like, we could just continue on the topic, but I have 5 others, so we're
No,
gonna
I'm
retreat
here
back to
for it.
one and one of those, and hopefully we'll come back to this. What's the first thing you usually notice about someone when meeting them?
I'm really sensitive. I'm really sensitive, period. But I'm really sensitive to energy. And pretty quickly, I can feel someone. And I think without even trying, that's the first thing I pick up is
Mm.
how soft they are, or um, even the briskness of someone's spirit. I can just feel it. I don't know why. They can. Yeah.
Do you mind me asking, when you say you feel it, how does that translate in your body?
Mm. It kind of feels like the way you step out of your house and you just suddenly know what the weather is,
Mm.
right? Like, oh, there's strong wind today. Oh, it's cold, colder than yesterday. Oh, it's so humid. I feel that like beneath my skin is the best way I can put it. And I always have since I was a child. I could feel that. Yeah.
That is so cool. Thank you for answering that. I love
Thank
that
you for asking
so much.
that. I never get asked that.
Hopefully, there'll be lots more of those in this conversation. What would be the title and or tagline if there was a sitcom made about your life?
She makes no sense in total sense. Yeah, that's me at my core.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I'd watch.
You'd watch? Oh, Jen, you'll be the party of one. Watch it.
I don't think so. Oh my gosh, that's great. So good. Would you rather spend a day without your phone or without speaking?
A day without my phone. Yeah. Okay, I have to ask you, what would you choose?
I would do the same,
Mm.
but I think I'd also not speak anyway.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I'm like, why not both?
I agree.
I don't know. Have you ever done a silent retreat?
Yeah, I did a
Mm.
10-day one. Did you do it?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I loved it.
Too. Well, I only loved it the last day. I was
Mm,
resisting until the last moment, and I was like, "Oh, I get why people do this."
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I think I had an idea of what I thought it was supposed to be like, and I thought I was ready for it, and I think it was one of those experiences that, like, humbles you
Mhm.
because you get there and then you're like, "Oh, I have no clue how to practice the integrity of what they're asking us to do." My retreat was in Thailand 12 years ago. You know, we meditated 8 hours every day collectively and woke up at 4 AM, and it was I think a lot of the lifestyle parts were so hard on me. Not speaking was really easy. It was probably the easiest part, but just slowing down that much to just be inside myself. If anyone saw what was happening internally, I was, like, raging until the last day. I was like, "Oh, we let go and then we touch God, whatever God."
Whatever we're supposed to touch.
Like, "I give up. Got it. This is great."
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's so important to talk about that because, like quite a few things, we tend to glamorize things.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I cannot I could probably write a whole 500-page essay of what that was really like the
Mhm.
truth behind it. So much more
Yeah.
happened than what it looks.
Well, and that's the thing. When we finally stop making noise externally, we get to actually hear the noise internally,
Yes,
and it gets real loud real quick.
absolutely. Did you have a similar experience or different?
I did indeed. I found not speaking very easy.
Yeah.
I also really enjoyed the invitation to communicate with others without words.
Mm,
I've always really loved eye contact, and that would have been my answer to what's the first thing that you notice when you meet people. For me, it's always the eyes,
wow.
and I think you can tell a lot from whether someone is willing to meet your eyes or how they utilize eye contact, willingness, comfort, discomfort.
Mhm.
Because I've also experienced periods of time in my life where I couldn't really meet people's eyes when I was struggling internally. There's something, we've heard lots about this, the eyes are the windows to the soul, and I really found that actually to be quite true.
Yep.
And so the same with, I think, maybe my timing for my silent retreat, because I had already been in a period of slowing down or consciously choosing to slow down. And
Wow.
so I think I helped myself a little bit, that intentional time on either side to fade in, fade out. But yes, agreed. In just being willing to only hear what's going on internally. It's a different type of willingness. You know, both of us in the work that we do, silence plays a very important role.
Huge.
And so if we can't get comfortable with our own silence, how can we possibly sit in the comfort and discomfort of someone else's?
That was powerful. I agree 1,000%. Actually, that makes me, like, look back and see that experience differently. Yeah, just, like, how much I didn't realize I was choosing into an experience that would just be another stepping stone to prepare me for the work that I do, that you do. It's wild what we choose, how much it makes sense looking back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a practice, I call it the living obituary, and
I love this.
it's so good. It's so good, where I just every year on my birthday, I read over my obituary that I've written so far, and I sort of am able to piece together things that have happened in the last year and say, "Oh, how do they fit with this?" Or, "Did I have experiences before that laid the foundation for that?" Or, "Made this either more challenging or less challenging," or, "I was able to find more ease or less ease around these topics because I'd navigated something before." And I think, as I said, the work that we do, the death work and the grief work, we're constantly reminded of how precious it is to be alive and how powerful it is to have our mortality at the forefront
Mhm.
so that we live fully in whatever that means to us.
Yep.
Ooh, I knew this was gonna be a good one. Ooh.
Me too.
Okay, I still have 2 more wild
Yeah,
ones,
yeah.
but I feel like it's so nice. I feel like we're getting, like, little snippets of what's coming. So, stay tuned, everybody. What is your best childhood memory?
I had a image of, both my parents were so loving, very devoted, but I have a specific memory of my dad making a fort with our kitchen chairs and a blanket, and we were watching The Sound of Music,
Hmm.
and he looked over at me, and he told me that he loved me, and I was too busy watching the film. And so then he asked me, Melinda, does mommy and daddy tell you that we love you too much? And I, in a sassy voice, said, yes. Tell me why. And I remember him laughing. I think I look back at that now and I'm so grateful that I was loved like that. And every time
Mm.
I, get all human and insecure and flustered, I just think back to that and I'm like, no, but like that was my baseline growing up.
Oof. Mm. That just gave me warm fuzzies everywhere. I love it.
Yeah,
Okay, you have almost made it through the weird and wonderfuls. We have one more.
these are great.
I could do an entire podcast just doing this. One day I might.
Please.
They just bring me so much joy. Okay, if you could add a word to the dictionary, what would it be, and what would the definition be as well?
Actually, I know this pretty quickly because I'm so passionate about it. I wish the word or phrase, conscious rotting
Mm,
was in the dictionary.
tell me more.
It's a creative phrase that came up in my grief work when I was supporting folks who like symbolism, I think plays a huge role in helping us to process our human experience. And during that, it's hard to say arbitrarily, right? But like the raw beginning of a grief journey, whatever that looks like and whatever time that means to you, it's really painful and nasty there. It's a whole force that you found yourself in that you can't control because it's a life force that's teaching you what it needs and how it wants to come through you. And I never thought I'd use a word or phrase so much, but I'll always reflect back to folks like, this looks like your conscious rotting era. It's okay. It's totally okay to rot and trust it. And I think when we have an awareness of it, there's some consciousness to it. There's something we're intentionally allowing. And we can trust that it is of service back to us. So rot away is what I'll say.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much.
You do connect with it.
I
Thank
don't
you.
know. Okay, well, I mean, I'm not surprised, but also there's purpose in the rot, and
Yeah.
I was just, thinking back to the beginning of the conversation that we were already having about the seasons and how much nature has to teach us, and using the word, trust. Trusting that the body knows what it's doing, the brain knows what it's doing, our energy, our life force knows what it's doing when we navigate these liminal spaces of sometimes annihilation and entire discombobulation, where it's like the world has flipped upside down and nothing makes sense. And if you look at nature, we wouldn't have all the things that we celebrate if we didn't have the death and decay. And it can be very, very hard to help people understand that when they're in the thick of it. But I love this idea of conscious rotting because I feel like someone would hear that, laugh, be like, "Tell me more."
Right.
And it's very permission giving,
Yeah.
and that's what we really need when we're creating a relationship with our grief.
It's all about permission. Mhm.
Permission slips, we're just handing them out everywhere. Whatever you
Oh,
need a permission slip for, take it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love what you said. Like, none of what we see would be possible without the death, the decay, and we are no different. I once had a practitioner tell me, he's like, "As you go into this process, you may feel like at some point you're dying, but I just wanna reframe for you that you're not dying, something in you is dying." And
Mhm.
I cling to that a lot because grief can make you feel like you're dying.
I love that, and it's something that I cling to as well. When we think about grief, so often we tend to attach it to death as
Mhm.
this final act that we take, but we grieve all the way along. Just
Yeah.
living our lives, there's
Yeah.
endings everywhere,
Mhm.
and we're not taught how to do endings. We're told to celebrate the beginnings,
Mhm.
the fresh energy, the new idea, the start, but we're not taught how to hold and navigate what has to come before.
Yep.
So, yeah, man, I love this. I love this so much. Okay. So, we made it.
We made
That was
it.
that was amazing. That's the whole episode, everybody. We're
Yeah.
done. Kidding, kidding.
Some
So,
of us
so
finish these questions.
so good, so good. Well, thank you for your willingness to just dive in with me there.
Oh, that was actually really like a when they talk about icebreakers at the beginning of, like, an event, those are my dream icebreaker questions.
Yeah, and that's exactly what these are, is it's just amazing how deep you can go quickly
Yeah,
when both people come in intentionally with these questions and answers. I love it.
it's cool.
So, we've set the scene, I feel.
Yeah.
We already had a little glimpse. I feel like I was just watching through a window when you were describing that fort scene with your dad. I'm wondering if you could take us back to the beginning and tell us a little bit about what that foundation looked like, felt like as it was being built,
Mhm.
and how it's brought you well, we're talking about the living obituary, how it's brought you to where you are.
Ooh, Jen, you're gonna get a very wild response back. Hopefully, it's what actually, I'd be delighted to know if other people have shared this or experienced this. My journey began obviously before I was here, and why I say that is because my parents have always told me that they accidentally channeled my name
Mm.
same time, and that gave them this intuitive feeling that I was choosing them when I did. If that doesn't set up a scene, my parents mean the world to me. We've been close my whole life. Of course, natural parent-child dynamics, treacherous, beautiful, but they were definitely quirky in the sense where they had a spiritual nature to them that I don't think they even knew they had,
Mm.
and that's how they raised me, in a home where we had some very unexplainable, maybe one would say paranormal activity that shook them, but also I think it's the culture of who they are, very open, explorative, filled with love, and a lot of my childhood was was filled with, yeah, like, truly, I could feel how nurturing they were, but we had a lot of experiences that happened in our home that no one would understand or could explain. My dad read a book called The Messengers, and it was about angels when I was, like, 3 or 4 years old, and in the book, I never read it, but they brought up the presence of angels and our loved ones always being with us. And, the author talked about the significance of his relationship with a number 444.
Mhm.
And my dad read that. He's a social worker, so he was always in this state of exploration and of service to the public. But in the home, he was also exploring things internally with his relationship with life. And so having a front row seat to that, he would read the book and then he would be like, "Wow, this is what I learned. 444 is apparently, this number that is universally like a way that we're all connected to each other. It's a sign that we're never alone." And then things started happening in our house. Like my
Mhm.
alarm clock would freeze at 4:44 AM, and he'd have to come in and like turn it off. And he once got a text message. This was like the early days of cell phones. He got a text message from an unknown sender at 4:44 AM that said, "I love you." And he could never figure out who sent it. And it was kind of like our family motto that whenever we would see a 444, we would point it out or we would talk about what that meant to us. And that followed me my whole life. Like my first license plate on my first car had 444 in the middle of it. My grandmother passed away on April 4th, 2014. Things like that. That was like infused in my life without trying. I would say that was, like, such a significant part of how I was raised, here in Hawaii. And, past that, like, my parents, of course, attracted the kindest people, so we were always with community or, my dad's best friends are, like, psychics, so they're, like, coming in and out of our house or, like, Buddhist priests. There was just a lot of exposure to the supernatural being natural. And I was lucky because I had a dad who would, on the way to preschool, recite the Course in Miracles to me or would have me do guided meditations where I could feel the love in my soul. Yeah, it's pretty wondrous to reflect back on. I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely, it did. As I said, it was just like, what's the foundation here? And now that gives us such a good sense of where you come from.
Yeah, I've never shared that publicly. Like, people closest to me now or people who I'm in spaces where this is a very natural thing to share. But I've never shared it in a way like this, and it feels amazing.
I was gonna say, how does it feel?
It feels really right to own that.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing it. I loved listening. I have so many questions. This is the fun part where my brain's like, boop, 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 boop.
I love that.
So hearing that your dad was a social worker
Mhm.
and knowing that you also became a social worker, was that something that you knew relatively early was calling to you? Maybe not the social work piece, but some kind of care service piece. Was that pretty clear to you early on?
Yes. Yeah. My mom, she was a teacher. She also had her master's in counseling, so both of them were very service-oriented, professionally, but also personally, like, they were always taking care of people. I think that modeled for me from a young age that that's what you do. Of course, I will never sugarcoat it. I think every family can relate to the sense that there's always things to work through or like a dominant culture that persists in a way that so I'm trying to find my words.
Take a moment.
Maybe simply put, the other side of being a very kind family is we were always very exhausted and burnt out. And I think I saw a lot of that in my parents. And together as a family, that's been the thing that we've all tried to work through at different points, like learning boundaries and truly how to nourish ourselves, not from a textbook, but really from feeling into our bodies. I would say the foundation of seeing them be so generous and connected to others, it was a gift.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, just because I too have navigated and am still navigating the journey of boundary making and balancing self and other care. What are some of the things that nourish you and have nourished you? And maybe they've changed over the years because we evolve as we find different ways of living and being in the world. But I would love to know, and I'm sure there are people listening who can resonate, not the textbook, but the real world embodied nourishment. What does that look like for you?
I find that a lot of what I did as a kid is coming back as an
Mhm.
adult. So I was a really creative kid and I was really comfortable being alone, like too comfortable where my parents were actually so worried for me. My parents can't believe I have friends because as a kid, I wanted no friends. I needed one friend. And that was my friend Paige, which I'll share more about later. But I didn't need much past that. I loved being in my room, drawing and crafting and playing with Barbies, and I do the same thing now without the I don't have Barbies, unfortunately, but I'm painting all the time and creating all the time. I wrote books when I was a kid, and now I'm a writer, and I can't believe that either. The only sport I ever loved was swimming. After trying a lot of things, trying to be like a more adventurous adult, I've come all the way back to admitting I don't like land sports. I just like to swim.
Good for you. It's liberating, isn't it?
It's so liberating to just own who you are. And I found I need a lot of alone time.
Mhm.
I need so much time with myself to feel nourished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This really speaks to something very close to my heart, which is recreation,
Mhm.
hence the name of the podcast, but also this circling back to the things that brought us a sense of flow, not that we would have called it that as children, but the things that brought us presence and filled
Mhm.
our cups, and that we never apologized for prioritizing. They were celebrated when we were kids, right? It was like, "Yes, oh, isn't she so good over there? She's drawing and keeping herself entertained." And then as we get older, these things are like, "Well, that can be a hobby," but leaning more and more into them. And I think here too is something I wanna raise for anyone who's relatively new to self-care, is widening our definition of what that means.
Mhm.
And even if you are an extroverted person, I think one of the most powerful things that we can lean into, and especially if we find it crunchy, is being alone. And it's unsurprising when you talk about your childhood and loving being alone that perhaps that came a little bit easier to you later to be nourishing. You're like, "Oh, right, I remember now.
Yeah.
I can nourish myself." And I did that a lot when I was little. My own journey, I really struggled to be alone,
Oh, tell me more.
and now I love it. I love it so much. I crave it. And I think that this is part of the conversation around continually reintroducing yourself to yourself and
Mm.
being willing to lean into the things that might cause discomfort. We talk about voluntary discomfort being this
Mhm.
really important thing for our growth. And we often attach that to things like going to the gym. Some people talk
Mm.
about cold plunges, whatever your voluntary discomfort is. But I think for a lot of people, actually, and this returns back to our answer to the would you rather not have your phone for a day or not speak? And both of us were like, hey, Why not both? Very indicative. But it took me a long time to learn how to be comfortable in my own silence and in my own space. And I think that comes back to when we quiet the external noise, the internal noise gets really loud. And that's where I think meditation comes in as this really meditation mindfulness as this really important tool for learning how to witness and listen to that internal noise without being swept away by it or overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
I just encourage anybody listening, even if it's really hard, try to create segments of your day that are just yours. Maybe parents could probably resonate with this. Maybe that's the time. I don't know. I don't have kids, but kids are a lot.
Yes.
And so maybe when you become a parent, that's some people's pathway towards loving being alone and
Yeah.
quiet. I didn't have that, so I had to find my own ways to it. But maybe it's out of experiences of overwhelm that we come to really seek and crave the solitude and the quiet. And we can find that so nourishing.
That's so well said. When did you realize that you had come this far to love your alone time? Like, was there a moment or was there just like a stage of your life?
Yeah, it's really been in the last sort of 3 to 4 years, and it came to me through burnout,
Mm,
glorifying busyness and productivity as self-worth,
mhm.
and that met with caregiving. And so every minute of every day was taken up by everyone but me. And I think that I was so used to the noise that silence felt really challenging. And through caregiving and death work, meditation, and choosing to delve deeply into those things personally and professionally, that's not for everyone, but for my personal journey, the professional piece added a layer of accountability where I had to walk the walk and talk the talk. I remember doing my death doula training and we were practicing silence with a client, a dying person. And that was maybe the moment when I realized that I had crossed a threshold because I was able to sit there, not in total comfort, and maybe that won't ever come, and that's okay too, but comfortable in my discomfort. I remember thinking to myself, thank goodness I did my meditation teacher's training first because this death doula training is like meditation on crack. Like, it takes it so much further because the way that I have experienced it, and it might not be this way for everyone, I lent to meditation for my own coping. It was a very personal tool for navigating some really difficult times in my life. It was learning to sit with my discomfort. When I did my death doula training, it was so I could sit with both mine and their circle of care. And I think that there's also something about death work and grief work that's so liminal. It's like lineage and legacy all at once. So when you're in it, you're almost present with everything that exists.
Yeah.
I can't, it's hard to put words to. It's kind of like you describing how you feel people's energy. It's like, I can kind of try to explain this to you, but so when you were talking about this sort of spiritual foundation that you have, I don't think we can come to death work, grief work, human work like this in the liminal spaces without some deepening of our relationship with spirituality, whatever that means to us. But when you're present at time of death or even along the way or afterwards with their loved ones, there's something bigger there that you're a part of. And that to me has been the biggest shift. That's a long answer to your question, but
That felt like self-care to receive. That was so beautiful.
care for each other.
Jen, your words. I'm speechless.
Mm. So as you listened to that and you're present with yourself, and we're always practicing, right? That's the thing. I think once you're doing this work, you never stop. And it really comes down to presence with what is. What did it bring up for you?
It brought me to the last 3 days of one of my best friends' lives when she was at her end of her journey, physically, humanly, but just at the beginning of who I've always known her to be, this force of nature that's in
Mm.
everything. I loved the way you described, like, it just felt like poetry to receive what your experience is of sitting with someone and you are not just holding the space of theirs, but yourself too. And like you said, you can't words wouldn't even do it justice. It's like a whole language body that knows like, oh wow, this is like a different way of existing all of a sudden. And it's so sacred.
Mm.
I remember feeling so devastated to be at the bedside of Paige. And yet, I had never been more present and felt more alive in my life. And I remember even like having some awareness that all of that was true, but not even understanding or conceptualizing like what is happening. Just kind of like noticing, oh, this is something I did not know was possible to feel in this human experience.
Mm.
But I think this is what life is really about. This is the most precious duality of loving someone so much. You see the I feel like in that moment, I saw her whole life in a moment, right? And yet I completely understood that there was a greater nature that was taking her somewhere that neither of us could understand. And having that level of like trust, but really not wanting to trust, it broke me open. I don't know how else to say it, but I was like, holy moly. Okay, something is happening beyond what either of us could have envisioned for
Mhm.
her. I don't know how an experience of like of that doesn't shape someone, but it completely reshaped me in the direction I was taking my life.
Mm. Can you tell me a bit more about her?
Yes. Actually, can I pee first?
Yeah.
Yes, I will pee. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Always. I can't concentrate if I have to pee. I'm like, don't try to have a conversation with me.
What's so funny too, whenever I talk about those last 3 days in the hospital, something physically always happens to me.
Yeah.
Of course, right? But
Yeah.
without
'Cause you're
fail.
well, it's that's what the body does. It holds things that we can't intellectualize.
Yep.
and it's extremely wise, and I think that that's a big part of our jobs too with grief, death,
Mhm.
is helping people trust that their body knows what it's doing.
Yeah. Well
Yeah.
said.
Mm,
Can you remind me what you asked? Tell you
yeah.
more about Paige?
Yes, I would love if you could tell us a little bit more about Paige and her in your life.
She was she was like everything in one person, and she always was. She could be as cute as a cupcake and tell me, "Okay, all we're doing is dressing up our Barbies and doing this today, and then we're gonna make cookies." And then there was a force of nature in her that had the wildest tattoos, like, on her in the middle of her chest that we hid from her grandfather until her last breath, and was ready to go on any adventure and do just about anything. She was the first friend I met in life,
Mm,
and for a long time through my childhood, she was my only best friend. Our moms are best friends. I know. The older I get, the more I realize, like, wow, what a fairy tale that must have been for them. We're so close. Memories that I have of my own home, like what my house smelled like, what my favorite meals were, I can do the same when I think of her home. I remember what the carpet in her house smelled like. I can still identify it to this day if I get a whiff. Yeah. Did nothing with her and everything. She was the safest place on earth for me as a really sensitive kid. She completely embraced me, even though I'm sure I was so challenging, crying all the time, not wanting to meet any of her friends. But it was good because her friends taught me how to socialize with more than just her. And then it was hard because in middle school and high school, we saw each other less. We went to 2 different schools.
mm,
But every time we did get together, I was like, "Oh, there's my childhood best friend." It wasn't until she was diagnosed with cancer a year before she passed did we reconnect the way we did as children. Something I forgot to mention is she battled cancer for the first time when we were kids. I think she was
mm,
2 or 3, and I remember visiting her in the hospital and bringing, like, a Barbie and always a Happy Meal, and, we would make the most of it. We weren't playing house in her bedroom, but we were now doing it in a hospital bed. And I think when you go through things like that as a kid, some part of you just remembers as adults, because when I had learned that she had cancer again in a different part of her body, it was like we just clicked right back in. And you can have a romantic love of your life, right? Like, everyone knows that in our culture, but I think your friends can also be the love of your life, and I always say that. My friends are, and she was one of them. I saw her come alive. I'm sure you see this with your work as a death doula, walking people on their journey. For her, even though she had asked us not to entertain the possibility of her death, I think it was just too much to bear at 23. She did dive all the way into what her mortality really meant to her and how she wanted to live. So for the whole year that she was battling a really aggressive cancer, every conversation we had and experience we took together, I just saw her blossom in a way that I did not know was possible for
mm,
holding what she was holding. I think a lot of people in her life can say that. Like, she was just so undeniably inspiring, beautiful, and didn't even have a scope of how beautiful, and my greatest teacher. A lot of what I'm passionate about now, she introduced me to. So when she passed, it was like getting the love of your life and then losing them in a moment. And, I to this day, I hold, especially those last 3 days in the hospital room, as the most hellish, devastating experience of my life, but the most breathtaking. Yeah, the most breathtaking.
Yeah, I just wanna soak that in.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Feels
Yeah.
so good to sit that in actually and talk about her.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's another piece here, right, is how do we navigate grief ourselves and with others that we care about, or even strangers? And one of the simplest things that we can offer is just to listen, ask about them. You know, we make assumptions that by asking about people who have died that it's gonna make it worse, but trust me, they're already hurting.
Yeah,
And talking about them, remembering them, laughing, crying, all of it. It's one of the best things we can offer.
I agree. I agree. It never gets old to talk about the person that you love that may, while not earthside, is so alive in your being. Yeah.
Mhm. I'm interested to know, I'm just curious, and this is open to interpretation as always, but how do you carry Paige with you? What does that mean to you?
I think there's a range of ways I've learned to, but I think I'm most excited that there's so much I don't know yet of how I'll carry her. But there were all these stages in my journey where it meant so much to me to just wear her earrings. I still use her bag,
Mhm.
uh, often and wore, a necklace that her mom gifted a bunch of us. And then there's things like I I'll be in a predicament. I'll be reflecting on what to do next about something, and I will just picture her sitting across from me, like, on a table, giving me advice, and it's just so helpful. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it really is like having an angel, right on your shoulder." I often think too I get a lot of insight, again, from remembering what she looked like dying. I think that image for the first few years was really painful, but then it transformed into something that helps me sift through the bullshit and remember what life's about. Yeah. It feels impossible to not carry her. I think there's a million other ways I'm maybe not aware that that's her coming through, but I think about her every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious about everything, but at what point was it around then that you decided to get into grief work? Is that what
Mm.
inspired you? And then I have a secondary question too that I just wanna throw out there before it foofs out of my mind, which is when you think back on that year witnessing Paige navigating her mortality because she had to, rather than before she had to, are there certain things that you witnessed her doing that you've also put into practice
Mm.
or you've helped others put into practice in grief work?
Oof. Wow, can I answer that question first? That was washed me over like a wave. You're good at this, Jen.
This is me just leaning into the energy of being forever 5 and asking question after question after question because they never end.
It's your gift. Curiosity is truly what I've learned is how we get through life. It must be
I
curious.
agree. I agree. I don't understand when people say they're bored. How are you bored? Anyway.
Wow. So, yeah, that year of Paige's life, I would say what she really embodied that shaped me and my work is her curiosity. She became boundlessly curious about everything. Part of her daily updates to me were about, like, here's what I learned about cancer. Here's what I've learned about the universe. Here's what I think could also be happening astrologically.
Yeah.
And I would be like, oh my gosh, tell me everything. And besides having cancer treatments, we were always talking about books, right? And a few of our favorites were Many Lives, Many Masters, every Brene Brown book. There were a few that she read that I can't remember the names, but they were also about past lives. And
Mhm.
she had done a regression that was so helpful for her in understanding her spiritual journey. And I think the way that that infused the work I do, it just kind of added a lot of layers to how I listen to someone. And besides helping people hear their own grief, I find that an inevitable place we go is their relationship with life and their own soul. And the way her and I explored it together gave me a fearlessness of there's nowhere I'm not willing to go with someone in their exploration of the place that's really scary sometimes to go alone. I hope I said that justice because there's just so many moments in a year where you go to a place with someone that like that was my teaching ground of can I be with this amount of vulnerability? And yes, I can because I love her, so I will stretch. She had big dreams for her life too, and that taught me a lot about the grief journey being about do you have the courage to decay, but also when hope finds you, either in it or at another point of it, do you also have the courage to dream? Again, that really taught me about being with the bandwidth of both can be true. I credit a lot of what she modeled to seeing what's possible with each person that I walk with. Again, it was breathtaking. And as for my journey, she passed away June 13th of 2018. And I fell into the worst chapter of my life, not processing my grief. And coaching found me a whole year later, June of 2019. At that time, I was so desperate for it sounds very victimy, but I was so desperate for something to save me that that was initially what I thought this coaching program was gonna do, was save me. And then I forgot that I had invested into the most rigorous program, probably even more emotionally rigorous than my bachelor's, that instead of relating to me as this fragile baby bird, the program related to me as this wise woman that was about to rise the fuck up and listen to herself and like coach from a place of resiliency and love. And it was that training that led me into, wait, I love this, but I want to be of service to grief. So that's when I found grief coaching.
I feel like grief is a bit of a buzzword right now. Like, there's a lot
Mm.
online going on about grief,
Is there?
and yeah, at least I don't know, in my algorithm.
I think I'm so saturated in it that I don't always catch these things.
Well, and this is the thing, what we expose ourselves to and what we place out there, what we talk about, what we focus on finds us, right? And
Yeah.
so that might be more indicative of just what I've been doing rather
Mm,
than what's actually happening out in there in the world. But I feel like I see a lot more about grief now than I have in previous years,
Mhm. Yeah.
and more about death too, as we have this momentum of trying to make all of this less taboo and more open-minded, open-hearted, open-armed in our approach. As I listen to you talk about your journey of becoming a life coach and then a grief coach, what is life without grief? Both and.
Both end.
Yeah, it's kind of how I feel about my own work. I call myself a life and death transition guide because life doesn't exist without death, and death doesn't exist without life. Both and. And I loved what you said about multiple things being true at once. I talk about this a lot. I usually refer to it as the superpower of being human, is that we can feel so many different things at the same time. I talk about the grieving and gratitude spectrum, that we're just consistently moving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Both are true, both are present. I might just be feeling a little bit more towards gratitude today. It's a little more accessible to me
Mhm.
because I've slept and I'm well fed and I'm resourced. You know, simple things, but they make a big difference for our window of tolerance, right? And so as I say that, when I say, what is life without grief? And talking about the fact that death in its many forms, whether that's end of relationships, businesses, moving countries, death of a loved one. And I'm not saying this to like do any kind of equating one to the other. I'm just talking about widening our definition of death and endings.
Mhm.
Death in its forms of all different kinds, in my experience, pulls focus on what matters in a way that nothing else can. And so when you talk about those final 3 days with Paige in
Mhm.
terms of shaping who you've become and who you're becoming, because it's an ongoing process, I think that this is something that's really important for people to hear, especially when they're in the thick of it.
Yeah.
And nobody can ever really tell you.
Yeah.
We can mention it, we can talk about it, but as I said, maybe it's not accessible. And so I'd love to just hear a little bit more from you when I say, "What is life without grief?" And I ask you, "What does grief mean to you?" What comes up?
I was at a 2-day grief conference just yesterday and the day before, and it was a conference specifically for parents grieving children and siblings grieving siblings. It's so visceral to be around so many people that know that level of loss. And being saturated in a small space where we're going to workshops on different aspects of the grief experience, it just emphasized for me that life really is this technicolor spectrum because a loss, we never stop holding the hand of death and loss, right? Through everything we go through. I loved what one of the speakers said. He was like, "You may think you signed up for a grief conference because you have grief, but really, at its core, this is a love conference because we
Mm,
wouldn't know this grief if we didn't first have the courage to love." And I just think about how bleak life would be if we didn't have the opportunity to be this brave with our lives,
mm,
to love, to be brave enough to know joy. Oh, I love when Brené Brown talks about from her research, the hardest emotion to feel, it's not, everything that you would think it is. It's joy.
Mm.
It's so vulnerable. And I don't know if we would know the heights of it if we didn't have the courage to travel the depths of our own grief. To me, it's what this lifetime holds and offers. It can be a treacherous thing, right? I've definitely touched a grief where it took my breath away and I could do nothing more than take sips of water and stare into the sky. And I think witnessing and hearing stories of what others have had to journey with their grief, it is in so many ways you're like, wow, that's a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. And yet I trust the human spirit so much that even with the worst pain of your life, I think if you let grief break you down, it will always break you open.
Mm.
And we never have to be grateful for the loss itself, right? Like I will never look at a parent and invite them to be grateful for their child's death. But I think there is a space reserved in the grief experience where we can be grateful for who we become. You're universally true for a lot of grievers. They're more present, they're more compassionate, empathetic, softer than they ever knew they could be before loss. Uh, yeah, there's a greater awareness that I think grief gives us access to in this human experience.
Yeah, I felt that right down to my bones.
Thank you for that question. Do
Mhm.
you have thoughts or like a way you would answer that? Like, what is life without grief?
I don't think it exists. If I use the reference point of my own life through willingness to lean in
Mhm.
when society encourages us to lean out, get back to normal. What is normal? I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you if I hadn't experienced the messy nature of my life and been willing to sit with it, integrate what I can, make peace with the parts I can't and maybe never will. And that's an ongoing process. But I think that for me, in my definition of what it means to live fully, grief is an integral part. I love the phrase broken open because that's exactly what it feels like. That's very visceral for me. When you say that phrase, I'm like, "Oh, I feel that. I feel that in my chest."
Yeah.
I think moving away from more limited interpretations of grief are important as we recognize we get to decide what we believe. Nobody can tell you what's best for you, and that we really are our own experts. I say that in the sense that I don't think even on my deathbed I'm gonna feel like I'm my own expert, but I try to lean into trusting myself more and that what I'm feeling is valid and that grief is not something to move through or get over. It is a part of who I am.
Mhm.
I have a relationship with it. I think naturally my curiosity has led me to a lot of trial and error for finding different ways of navigating that relationship, deepening that relationship, at times hating that it has to exist, and yet other times knowing deep within myself that it has such purpose if I am to live truthfully and deeply and fully. I think leaning in, even when it feels impossible, having either certain safe people, safe practices where they almost act like a tether
Mm,
back to a sense of safety,
yeah.
even at times when it feels like that's almost non-existent. Maybe there's just a sliver of safety somewhere, but those tethers allow us to explore our grief. I'm a scuba diver, so I always like to think of it like scuba diving. Like, I'm on the surface and I've got a safety boat and I'm tethered to the boat. Some days, all that's accessible to me are the shallows, and I can kind of sit in those first few feet, maybe see some fish,
Mhm.
but the dark just is too much. I can't go there. And then other days when I'm feeling that relief, even
Mm,
if it's brief, and I'm feeling that resilience that I've built over time by suffering, because we can't build it otherwise. What is life without grief? What is resilience without suffering? I can go deeper.
yeah.
And the more that I've become intimate with my relationship with grief as a part of who I am, rather than just an experience to, as I said, get over or move forward from, the deeper I've been able to go without overwhelm. But it's why I think the work we do and providing the safe places and spaces for people to have that sense of tether to safety so that they can explore and that they don't have to do it alone. And that there will be a time as they build that resilience that they can. And isn't that a marvelous thing, too? And so, my next question that's kind of coming up here as I talk to you about this, if someone's listening, no matter what age they are, maybe they're even in their 90s, and they've never allowed themselves to be broken open, to touch their grief. And that I say that with absolute non-judgment because I get it. And some lives people have lived, I can't possibly imagine the level of grief that they have experienced and the level of loss. And so those are lives of survival. And I am so privileged to put my loss in the perspective that I have not had to experience that level and that type of life. I've been very, very fortunate to be able to have the privilege to explore my grief safely.
Mhm. Well said.
What would be your words to someone who is maybe discovering that willingness? Maybe we can have 2 versions of this. I don't know. It depends on your
Mhm.
answer. Totally open to interpretation here, but I'm thinking about considering it before we have to because we're still well
Mhm.
and we're not in that urgency of our mortality, and also when we are. I would just love to hear some of your thoughts on that.
I had so many thoughts on that.
Uh-huh.
Oh, your questions take me to another universe, Jen. It's so good.
Get in my rocket ship, let's go.
Will, every day. Um, wow. Well, the first thought I had with your question was I love how you put it because I was struck with this humility of like, "Oh my gosh, I've been so lucky to get
Mm,
to explore my own grief in this way." That's the only reason why I've been able to travel further and further with it. And also know that there may be griefs ahead that I have no clue how to be with myself.
yeah.
So, to anyone at any stage of their life, I want to acknowledge that I already see me in you. That when we are at that level of, we don't even recognize life because there's something so frozen in here, right? In our body and our soul. There's something so unrecognizable in the terrain of our hearts. I have nothing but compassion. And I'm a firm believer that we all get by with just a little bit of encouragement and validation. So if you recognize yourself in a space where you are freaking terrified to soften and feel what may be below the surface, I want to validate that that might be a scary place to let yourself go, but you will survive it. You will. And you can even just visit and hate it and come back for air.
100%.
Or you might find something so deep and cathartic that you can't help but rest in it more, in the softness more, no matter what comes out of you. Yeah, whatever journey you decide to take, just from exploring what might be below the surface, I commend you.
Yeah, so beautiful.
Thank you.
As I'm conscious of time
Yes.
and that we're talking about some big things today, so I
Mhm.
really want to soak that in until our fingers get all pruny. Uh, but as you navigate your own life and your relationships with loved ones
Mm.
within the context of mortality and loss and life and presence and love and all the things that make us human. How do you live each day fully and with mortality in mind?
What came to me was I think a lot of people who see me in just a very mundane everyday life would say they can't believe I'm a grief coach because I am just so playful and silly and again creative, like just crafting like a little bird out of twigs or redecorating a corner of my room. It brings me so much joy on a daily basis. It's those little things that keep me going. I think I ask myself, it may sound like
Mhm.
a loaded question, but every day I kind of say to myself, wow, if this was my last day on earth, it would be enough. And maybe nothing happened other than like I painted and talked to my dad. And really it was still that was enough. But I think that is the gift of when you connect with your mortality, it just puts so much in perspective. Little joys are actually big joys. The thing I love about creativity too is it's not just what you produce, it's who you become. The ways I've witnessed myself transform because of creativity and what that looks like just in cooking and folding my clothes and how I, style my body every day. It's just another way of living not for social expectation and what the world expects you to be, but from this life force that just can't help but move you. That's so fulfilling to me. It's always enough.
It's funny that you brought up people witnessing you as a grief coach and being surprised by your playfulness. I get the same thing,
You
and
do?
I do, and I think this is quite common, and I really want to do a little myth bust here,
Yes.
that I think people who end up doing death work and grief work are actually some of the greatest lovers of life, and we're so in it,
So in it.
so
Yeah.
in it. Like I like when you were talking about even folding your laundry, I'm like, "I know this." The mundane moments hold magic. And, we were talking about liberation earlier. I mean, we talked about so much, but the liberation of just being entirely who you are, and so the energy that you save from not pretending, you can expend on all the things that you love, and none of it's taken for granted. And so I think we were talking about that life force energy when we feel exhausted. It's usually because we're not living true to who we really are and or want to be. And so just to dispel that little
Yeah, thank you.
myth, that we're all sitting over here, we're extremely morbid and
Right.
dark, have no joy. Actually, I've found the exact opposite as I've moved into this community of people across the planet who recognize that there is no life without grief and loss and death. And I think that's really the tagline of our sitcom.
Yes. Tagline.
I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you. Moved by who you are, Jen. And
Mm,
we wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for you following your curiosity and creativity and courage to create this platform. It is truly like such an honor to be here.
thank you. And I'm honored in return to be able to sit here and have these types of conversations. And
Uh,
I find them extremely human,
Yep.
beautifully, beautifully human. But this one in particular has been so close to my heart, and it's been really grounding to witness you in conversation with me and everyone we bring with us and everything we bring with us as we have these types of conversations. It's kind of like when I talked about the liminal space of being at the bedside, this conversation was the same level of
Mhm.
everything is here.
Yes. Wow.
So thanks for bringing it.
Oh, my pleasure. Kindred spirits. It's an honor.
Totally. So before we wrap up, I'd love if you could tell us more about the cause you've chosen for the recreation donation.
Oh, yeah. First of all, I love that that is part of this experience. Thank you. I chose a nonprofit in Hawaii called Let Grace In. They directly support parents who are grieving children. I think that's where they started, but now it's expanding, obviously, to siblings and such, and grandparents and their grandchildren. But they are doing amazing work for Hawaii. There's a lot of incredible resources I found when I was living in California that connect to the rest of the continental US. And because we're so isolated on the islands, the transfer of resources is always slower, naturally, and sometimes more scarce. but they are doing everything they can to offer the most holistic services to those grieving. And I will follow them to the end of the earth. So it means the world to me that you would contribute to them. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my honor. Absolutely. And, that's been such a beautiful experience of doing the podcast as well as by asking the guests to choose, I have donated to charities I have never heard of that I probably never would have discovered otherwise all over the world. And so that's been so fun
Oh,
for me. Thank you for choosing it, and I can't wait to support them and their work. And yours as well, and keep letting people know that, there's beautiful souls like yours that are willing to be with us in our hardest moments.
thank you. You too. You're a gem. So, so special.
I am going to accept that, thank you. I'm working on this.
Get it.
So I have one more question, and this is the one question that I ask every single guest, otherwise the questions are completely different. So, are you ready?
So ready.
What do you think is the meaning and purpose of life, the universe, and everything?
Oh, it's the courage to love. It's the courage to love. Yeah. And through love, I mean, we really welcome the full breath of life, all that that brings. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today. I just loved every minute of this.
Me too, Jen. Thank you so much.
This episode's recreation donation is in support of Let Grace In. As you now know from exploring with Melinda and I in this episode, this is a nonprofit organization created on Hawaii's island of Oahu to support families after the death of a child for any reason, from the perinatal period through young adulthood. They are dedicated to restoring hope to families by building community and fostering physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. They are also devoted to being a leading advocate for bereaved parents and siblings by implementing sustainable programs that improve the overall well-being of families grieving their child. Whether you can volunteer your time, money, or your voice, I hope you'll head over to their website to find out the different ways you can support their unique version of recreation for the world. Please take the time to let us know what the stories we explored in this episode meant to you. And if you do take action to support this month's cause, thank you. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Recreation to Recreation. If you or someone you know has a unique and inspiring story to tell, make sure to reach out so we can share it with the world. Until next time, keep experiencing, keep expanding, and keep exploring.